Dressed in striking red, Ling Heng, the lady with the flute, leaps off the cliff.
Her fury, like a blazing fire, roils the waters deep below, sending 30-foot waves crashing against the rocks.
Liu Yan, you faked your death just to run away.
Well, I, Ling Heng, am done playing your games. 3 years later,
Liu Yan stands in the middle of a bustling, crowded street, his brow tightly furrowed, with a look of complete confusion in his eyes.
Where is my family's Marquis estate?
Suddenly, a fire-breathing street performer spins around and accidentally blasts a plume of fire right at Liu Yan's hairline. Wisps of black smoke begin to rise from his head.
Whoops.
Sir, you were standing way too close. Sir, you were literally getting a front row seat to the action. Now your hair has been styled into a limited edition afro. Your perfect hairline just instantly turned into a wild lion's mane. Walk outside with that hair, and you're guaranteed to turn heads 100% of the time. On the former site of the Marquis estate, at Sila Pavilion's lively amusement theater, the sounds of acrobatics, storytelling, and street hawkers fill the air. Dressed in an elegant brocade gown, Ling Heng sits in a private booth on the second floor, gently waving a silk fan, smiling as she watches the chaos below. Dear ex-husband, long time no see. Do you like my theater? Back then, in the wedding hall, Lu's mother and his sister were crying their eyes out. A servant had just stumbled in, frantically shouting, "My lord has fallen off the cliff, my lord!" Liu Yan was riding back in haste to clear his name when he was ambushed and fell into the abyss. They searched for half a day, but only recovered his horse's carcass and a severed rein. I'm afraid he didn't make it. Underneath my red bridal veil, I couldn't hold back a cold sneer. Because as early as 3 months ago, I already knew they would pull a stunt like this. My family, the Lins, are the wealthiest merchants in Xuchong. With our business spanning the 4 seas, we naturally have eyes and ears everywhere. Before marrying into the Marquis estate, I paid a fortune to have someone dig deep into the Lu family's background. The old Marquis had spent his life squandering money in brothels and pleasure houses, leaving behind a mountain of massive debt. The Grand Marquis estate was nothing but a hollow shell. But what truly chilled me to the bone was finding out that Liu Yan had already pledged his life to his cousin, Liu Feng, only because his mother's family had been convicted of a crime. Liu Feng became the daughter of a disgraced official, making it impossible for her to be wed as his primary wife. So, the entire family hatched a scheme. They planned to use my marriage to seize my 80 chests of dowry to pay off their debts, and then have Liu Yan fake his death so he could run away with Liu Feng. Wait for me to clean up this entire mess, just so they can come back and enjoy the fruits of my labor? They think I'm just some clueless merchant's daughter? An easy target. They can push around, but little do they know, I've been traveling across the country with my father doing business since I was 14, and I've seen exactly how wicked people can be. They want to make a fool out of me? No way. Since they want to play out this little drama of falling off a cliff, then I'll play along and stage my own tragic suicide. For love. If Liu Yan can run, it's not like I don't have legs. If he runs, I run too. The sooner I run, the sooner I'll have peace. Having thoroughly mapped out my escape plan, I turned and whispered a few instructions to Kai Yun. Once she left, I pinched myself hard, took a deep breath, and forcefully ripped off my red bridal veil, revealing a face covered in tears.
Kaya gasped. Miss, what are you doing?
I cried out, sounding absolutely heartbroken. My husband isn't dead. I must find him. Amidst the whispers of the gathered guests, my mother-in-law rushed forward in a panic and grabbed me. My dear daughter-in-law, the servants can search for him. Just wait at home.
Please, don't do anything foolish.
No, I cried in grief, pushing her away. If my husband is dead,
I won't live without him.
With those words, I marched out of the estate, flanked by several maids. The carriage was already waiting outside. The driver cracked his whip, kicking up a cloud of dust. The carriage sped away with me inside, leaving Mother Lu, who had chased us outside, coughing with a face full of dust. Once the crowd behind us was out of sight, I wiped away my tears, my expression turning instantly calm. I quickly stripped off the heavy bridal gown and changed into a light, simple outfit, then threw the outer layer of the bridal robe back over it. Beside me, Caillou swiftly removed the heavy hairpins from my head, leaving only the phoenix crown resting loosely on top. The carriage sped along the road, and soon reached the place where Liu Yan had supposedly fallen off the cliff. A crowd had already gathered at the edge of the cliff. The servants from the Marquis's estate were half-heartedly poking around with bamboo poles, pretending to search. I got out of the carriage and stumbled all the way to the edge of the cliff, weeping as if my heart were being torn to pieces. No. I won't go. Why was your life so full of suffering? Having traveled with my father and seen all kinds of theater troupes, I know exactly how to put on a dramatic performance. My voice sounded absolutely desolate and hopeless. By the time I finished screaming, many onlookers were moved to tears. Once I had put on enough of a show, I sobbed a couple of times and let out a heart-wrenching cry. My husband. I'm coming to join you now. The moment the words left my mouth, I threw myself off the cliff, right before the eyes of the Liu family servants.
Gasps of horror erupted all around. The wind held past my ears,
And I plummeted precisely into the deep pool at the bottom. The icy water chilled me to the bone instantly. Gritting my teeth, I held my breath, quickly slipped out of my wedding gown, gripped off the phoenix coronet, and threw it into the water. Holding my breath, I sank beneath the surface and swiftly swam toward the shore. The riverbank was thick, with lush reeds, so I kept low, made a quick detour, and dashed into the forest. Deep in the woods, Cain was already waiting for me with a carriage. I climbed inside and changed out of my soaking wet clothes, putting on a set of men's clothing I usually wore when going out. The carriage sped down a hidden path, heading out of the city. At the same time, up on the cliff, Caillou led her people to search for my body. Of course, all they could find were my wedding gown and phoenix coronet. The young mistress was anxious and immediately sent the news back to the Marces' estate. I heard that Peng Muzhou, shocked and overcome with grief, fainted on the spot. I didn't even need to guess to know he was secretly overjoyed. The Marques's family only wanted to marry me for my dowry. Now that the eyesore was dead, those 80 chests of dowry would all be his. Those 80 dowry chests were made of the finest red sandalwood. It really was a pity. Meanwhile, the carriage kept pressing forward, and we finally arrived at a manor in the suburbs of the capital. This was one of the properties my parents had given me as part of my dowry. I had been wrapped in a cozy quilt the entire way. I'm still feeling a bit cold, but it's still a million times better than staying in the Marques's manor and being played for a fool. The carriage pulled up in front of a double courtyard house on the estate, and Nanny Chin, my dowry maid, rushed out to greet me. She used to be my mother's personal maid, and she's watched over me since I was a little girl. Before I married into the Marques's manor, I knew how formidable and influential a noble family like theirs could be, and that they might not easily accept someone like me. So, I made a backup plan just in case. I had her quietly set up this place on the estate, just to be safe. I never actually thought I'd end up needing it. When she saw how deathly pale my face was from the cold, Nanny Chin gasped in shock. She immediately ordered the servants to light the heated brick bed and rushed to the kitchen to brew a piping hot pot of thick ginger soup. I curled up deep under the blankets as the warmth slowly radiated from beneath me. It felt like being wrapped in a giant, warm embrace. Dazed and exhausted, I drifted off. But before I could fall into a deep sleep, the sharp scent of ginger tickled my nose. Nanny Chin gently patted my shoulder and whispered, "My lady, don't sleep just yet. Drink this ginger soup while it's hot. And sweat it out before you go to sleep." She brought the bowl over to me. Catching a chill like this is no small matter. She blew on the soup to cool it down and gently fed it to me. The fiery liquid slid down my throat, warming me up from the inside out. I drank it all down in one go. Soon, a fine layer of sweat broke out all over my body, and the deep, biting chill in my bones finally seeped out with it. In my dazed state, I felt Nanny Chin gently wiping the sweat from my brow before drifting off again. By the time I opened my eyes, it was already the following afternoon. Sunlight streamed through the wooden lattices of the window, shattering like golden dust across the floor. It felt so incredibly warm and cozy. I let out a long, lazy stretch as the delicious aroma drifted toward me. My stomach let out a loud, empty growl right at that moment. "Oh, my lady, you're awake. Come, quickly eat something." Nanny Chin walked in, carrying a wooden food container. Kasia folded back the blankets and set a small, low table on the heated bed. On it, she placed a bowl of delicate, golden steamed eggs with perilla and a bowl of rich, golden chicken noodle soup. "Eat up while it's nice and hot, my lady. The perilla will help sweat out the sickness and drive the remaining cold right out of your body. And the chicken soup will help build your strength back up." Regaining my energy, I picked up a spoon and took a bite of the steamed egg. It instantly melted in my mouth. The unique, fresh aroma of the perilla was like a gentle breeze, chasing away all the chill. I took another bite of the noodles. The rich chicken broth coated the noodles, warming my entire body. After happily slurping down the very last of the noodles, Kaisi started telling me the news Kaya sent over early this morning. Yesterday, after I jumped off the cliff, Mother Liu arrived by carriage. She cried a few fake tears, pretended to feel unwell, and left. As darkness fell, the Zhu family servants left as well. But Kaiwi still led the dowry servants to play the act to the fullest. They searched around the bottom of the cliff, over and over again, not returning to the Marquis mansion until the moon was high in the sky. By the time they dragged their lidden legs back to the Marsky mansion, they found the side gate tightly shut. They banged on it for quite a while, but there was no response from inside. Even Kaiwan, who had stayed behind to watch the room, had been kicked out. She was clutching a small bundle, squatting outside the side door. Her face was completely stained with tears. The young mistress just passed away, and I already threw me out. Caillou gritted her teeth and started pounding on the door again. After banging for the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, an impatient scolding finally came from inside. The madam ordered that no outsiders are allowed inside. A cold night wind swept past, making everyone shiver. More and more onlookers began to gather, whispering at the mouth of the alley. It was a shameful scene. Her daughter-in-law just died to follow her husband, and she's already kicking out the dowry servants? Is she planning to pocket the dowry? The Lin family is a massive, wealthy merchant family in Shuzhou.
80 chests of dowry. And even the chests themselves are made of red sandalwood.
That's worth a fortune. Amidst the crowd's chatter, Caillou pulled back. Her mission accomplished. She led everyone back to the mansion behind the street, the very place I had wanted from just today. The next morning, just as dawn was breaking,
The front gate was banged so hard it shook.
outside, Mother Lu's face was filled with an uncontrollable anxiety.
She brought along 7 or 8 burly maidservants.
And 10 broad-shouldered, muscular male servants, crowding the entrance.
The moment Caillou slid the bolt open,
Mother Lu pushed her way inside with her people. She cornered her right at the gate and demanded, "Where is your young mistress's dowry?"
Caillou hurriedly cursed it and replied,
Madam, wasn't the dowry already carried safely into your mansion?
Hearing this, Mother Lu's anger flared even hotter. She raised her voice, shrieking,
You insolent wench!
"I'm talking about the valuables inside those dowry trunks. Why on earth are the chests completely empty? Where did you people hide everything?" Seeing her rudeness, Haiyun refused to back down and retorted, "Madam, what you're saying makes absolutely no sense. 80 trunks of dowry were brought into this estate, with grand music and celebration. Everyone saw it with their own eyes. Our young mistress passed away just yesterday. And we, her dowry servants, were immediately kicked out of the estate by you. So, the dowry was locked away in your mansion, and you kept watch over it for half a day. Now it's suddenly completely empty? I should be the one asking you where it went."
Mother Lu's mouth twitched.
Last night, after she locked Caillou and the others out of the doors, she immediately brought in a locksmith in the dead of night to pry open every single one of the heavy locks on those 80 dowry trunks in the storeroom. She had fully expected them to be overflowing with gold, silver, and fine silks. But as she rummaged through trunk after trunk, they turned out to be completely empty. Mother collapsed straight onto the floor right then and there. She couldn't even drag herself up for a long time.
although the Lin family was far away in Shushan,
They were famous wealthy merchants throughout the region. Their business stretched across the entire nation. There was absolutely no way they would let their only daughter marry with empty dowry trunks.
she didn't sleep a wink all night.
She tossed and turned, and the more she thought about it, the more furious she became. Before dawn, she dragged her people and stormed over. Seeing that Caillou refused to tell the truth, Mother Lu composed herself, forcing a look of deep concern onto her face. I was only acting out of worry, she said. The elder Lins only have your young mistress as their sole daughter. Now that she's passed away, I already don't know how to face them.
If anything were to happen to her dowry,
I'm afraid Master and Madam Lin, well, none of you dowry servants would be able to answer to them either. Caillou feigned a look of panic at the right moment. Mother Lu seized the opportunity and asked,
since your Lin family's business spans across the nation,
did Miss Lin not bring anything else besides what was in those trunks? Was there really no other dowry? For instance, banknotes or land deeds? Caillou lowered her head, seemingly lost in thought for a moment. Since you asked, old ma'am, yes, there indeed is. The master did prepare a thick stack of banknotes, said to be for the young mistress's private dowry,
to be handed over to her husband once she married in.
Mother Lu's eyes lit up instantly. Where are those bills? Caillou let out a long, heavy sigh. She dabbed the corners of her eyes with her handkerchief. The young mistress kept them close on her person. She insisted on giving them to the groom herself on their wedding day. But now that she's met with this tragedy, I'm afraid those bills are still on her. Before she could even finish her sentence, Caillou burst into tears again. The colors on Mother Lu's face shifted like a spinning lantern, turning pale 1 second and flushed red the next, until finally, her face settled into a deathly livid pale. The carriage had plunged off a cliff. Mother Lu's vision went pitch black. She barely managed to steady herself before turning around to leave and nearly tripped over the high doorstep. Her maids and servants scrambled to follow her. The crowd had rushed in like a furious storm, only to stumble out in utter panic. Behind them, Caillou covered her face and wailed even louder, struggling to hide the smirk curling beneath her handkerchief. Over the next 3 days, the servants of the Yonging Marquette Manor suffered a living hell. With the freezing autumn wind setting in, the mountain breeze slashed at their faces like knives, and the deep pool below the cliff was bone-chillingly cold. A thin layer of ice had already formed along the edges. On Mother Lu's strict orders, servants paddled bamboo rafts, searching the pool inch by inch. When they reached the deep end, they tied ropes around their waists, taking turns diving into the freezing water to search for the body. Every time they emerged, they were shivering uncontrollably from the cold. Several of them had already come down with raging fevers, but Mother Lu refused to let them stop. If she's alive, I want her here. If she's dead, I want her corpse. Search every inch for her clothes, her shoes, her purse, everything.
fish them all out. She didn't stay idle either.
Trade a heavy cloak and clutching a hand warmer, she stood by the cliff's edge to oversee the search herself. By the second day, she began to cough. And by the third day, her face was flushed bright red from the burning fever. Her personal nanny tried to persuade her. The wind is too strong. You should head back to the manor to rest first, madam. We servants will keep an eye on things here. Lady Lu waved her hand, her voice already hoarse.
No. I have to watch over this myself.
I absolutely cannot let some outsider get away with this. After braving the freezing wind at the cliff edge for 3 days, on the morning of the 4th day,
Lady Lu collapsed on the mountaintop, burning up with a fever and curled up like a shrimp.
Madam, you can't stay out in the wind any longer.
The nanny stamped her feet in anxiety. Your health is what matters most.
Lady Lu wanted to say something, but was cut off by another fit of violent coughing.
She looked up, glanced at the bottomless pool of water,
And then at the shivering servants who had found absolutely nothing. Finally, she gave up hope. Gritting her teeth, she forced out a single word. Go. The 80 chests of dowry were already completely empty when they entered the manor.
If the dowry hadn't been empty,
I wouldn't have dared to slip away so freely. With refugees gathering everywhere in recent years, and bandits running rampant, Xipuan is thousands of miles away from the capital. Between the Marcus's manor and my family, there is also a massive social divide.
Fearing some accident, my parents converted most of my dowry into bank drafts from several major banks in the capital, along with property and land deeds, which I carry with me at all times. Those 80 dowry chests were merely a cover-up,
and they were completely empty inside.
The actual carriage of treasures was being secretly escorted by the Weion escort agency.
I was only waiting to establish a firm foothold in the Marcus's manor before having them delivered. The afternoon sun was still warm and gentle. I released a carrier pigeon from the estate with a brief note tied to its leg. It had only 2 words written on it. Wei Yang. That was the secret signal between me, my parents, and His Highness. This carriage of treasure would now never be sent to the capital. The Marcus's manor is in decline. Its descendants are worthless and unfilial, and it should have crumbled to dust long ago.
Is the Gu family really stupid to the bone?
Or have they read too many dramas and indulged in delusions to actually agree to Lu Yan's ridiculous plan of faking his death?
Lu's paternal family brought ruin upon their entire clan and was escorted back to their ancestral home in disgrace, and they are barred for holding office for 5 generations. I can understand his desperation to bring his niece in to give her family a helping hand,
But of all the things he shouldn't have done,
he shouldn't have blatantly kept the daughter of a convicted criminal right under our noses, and he certainly shouldn't have fantasized about letting her take over my position as the lady of this house. A position I've painstakingly built for years. Sure, the title of Marquess is supposed to be hereditary, but in this world, there is no such thing as permanent wealth and power. Back when the founding ancestors established the Great Show, they bestowed titles upon 4 dukes and 9 marquises. How illustrious they were.
But look at them today.
Only 3 of those families have barely survived, and we don't even have to look that far back.
During the late emperor's reign, the young champion Marcus passed away at an early age.
With no heir to inherit his title, it was stripped away in an instant. His mansion and imperial estates were completely confiscated.
an entire He family was reduced to commoners overnight.
Every new emperor brings his own court.
For an old family like the Lus, who have neither the emperor's favor nor any real achievements,
They've been leeching off the court for years, yet they still expect their glory to last for generations. I don't even need to lift a finger myself.
the ambitious new nobles in the capital, eager to make their move,
Already watching like hawks, waiting for the Lu family to collapse.
They can take their place and soar to the top.
So, I calmed my mind and carefully went over my memories.
one by one, I wrote down every single fatal financial black hole that I had covered for the Empress Dowager when she embezzled military funds.
Then, I had someone copy it, using their left hand to completely disguise the handwriting. Dozens of copies were made. Under the cover of the pitch black night, I sent people to secretly drop copies at the gates of the Emperor's maternal family.
In the Empress's family,
Naturally, the doorsteps of those famously upright ministers at the Court of Judicial Review were not missed either. As the saying goes, a dying giant still has some fight left.
but at this point, it is time for everyone to give the falling wall a final push.
How much the imperial court shook from the shockwave, I, a mere merchant, have no way of knowing. But as for what happened on the day the title was stripped,
Caillou was standing right in the front row of the onlookers.
cracking melon seeds and watching the drama from beginning to end.
Then she slipped back under the cover of night.
And vividly reenacted the whole thing for me. The Lu family line no longer has any surviving men. Perhaps the emperor showed some mercy, sparing them a bit of dignity, because only the women of the family were left. He only stripped them of their noble title and confiscated their grand mansion, giving them just half a day to pack up their belongings and get out. But the Lu family was nothing but an empty shell now. Aside from a few clothes and cheap jewelry, what else did they have of any real value? Every single penny they had left had been squandered on that lavish wedding, all because they were counting on me to marry in so they could leech off my massive dowry. Watching them seal up the Marquis mansion, Lu's mother finally seemed to snap out of her delusion. She slapped her thighs and wailed hysterically right there outside the gates.
My son isn't dead.
Our Lu family still has a bloodline.
I'll call him back right now.
Onlookers whispered among themselves, gossiping that the old woman had truly lost her mind. After all, who had ever heard of a noble heir faking his own death?
They all assumed she was just raving mad.
Lauren Eyre knelt before the officials, seizing the house, crying and begging.
My brother is really still alive.
He was just blinded by that wan woman.
That's why he faked his death and fled. He only planned to return and inherit the title once they had a child.
Maybe
Maybe that wan woman is already pregnant.
Our marker said really still has a bloodline left. Please, sir, you cannot let our family line end here.
the official delivering the decree had long lost his patience. He snapped coldly. Didn't you understand the imperial decree? Stipping your title wasn't just because you have no heir, but also because of the late Marquis's crimes. He paused, his voice turning even heavier. Madame Lu, during this morning's court session, the memorials impeaching Marcy Lu for corruption piled up into a thick stack. His Majesty was absolutely furious. Simply stripping your title was already sparing you some face. If you keep making a scene, old lady, don't blame me for showing no mercy. The moment he finished speaking, he unsheathed his blade. Lu's mother and Lu Wanar were so terrified they instantly stopped crying. The official continued. I suggest you pack up quickly. I have a busy day ahead. So I'm only giving you the time it takes for a single stick of incense to burn.
Only then did Lu's mother and Lu Wanar truly panic.
Crying hysterically, they scrambled in utter chaos to pack their things. How you watch the Lu family fall into utter chaos. Once she finished cracking her half bag of melon seeds from Wuye, she headed back to the Lin residence on the back street, thoroughly satisfied.
He'd just sat down and picked up his rice bowl.
When a sudden knocking echoed from the gate, the gatekeeper came to report that people from the Lu family had arrived.
Lai Lu fellow is still putting on airs, the servant said.
He claims that since our two families are in-laws, even though our lady is gone, the duty between us still stands.
And they want to stay here for a while? Hearing this, he slowly put down his chopsticks
and calmly ordered the gatekeeper, take the big Womfound out to scare them. Their lady is dead.
So what kind of duty is there left to talk about?
If they keep making a scene, let the dog bite them first, then drag them to the authorities.
and sue them for embezzling our dowry.
The gatekeeper took the order and left. Before he even reached the front gate, he heard another commotion starting outside. Mother Lu's voice was sharp and screeching.
This isn't over.
Her screams could be heard loud and clear, even 2 alleys away.
You snobbish, low-life dogs. My son is a lord.
When he returns, you'll get what's coming to you.
A crowd of onlookers slowly began to gather. Back when the Lu family was powerful, they had constantly bullied their neighbors.
Were utterly detested.
Now, plenty of people were just there to enjoy the spectacle.
Some busybodies in the crowd were already jeering from the side. Hey, your dowry was seized by others.
What lord are you still yelling about?
Mother Lu was choked with rage, her face turning as red as a pig's liver. But her daughter was much sharper than her mother and quickly took over the conversation. In a pitiful, weeping voice, she cried,
Dear neighbors!
Our Lu family was framed by wicked people. We have been truly wronged.
My brother Luan is indeed still alive. Just wait until he returns, and the truth will surely come to light.
Unfortunately, her dramatic display was completely in vain. The crowd around them was still just enjoying the drama.
Twilight fell inch by inch.
And the last trace of dark red on the horizon was swallowed by the clouds. A freezing chill swirled through the alley on the north wind. Whipped by the cold wind, Mother Lu's mind cared a little. She began banging on the door again, with all her might.
Thing Wangxing belongs to our Lu family.
In life, he is ours, and in death, his ghost remains ours.
We are homeless now,
And our only choice is to seek shelter with our in-laws.
the Lin family has countless wealth.
It's not like it'll kill you to give us a bite of food and a bed to sleep on. Open this door. Open it right now. We're family, after all.
Don't push us into a corner like this.
It doesn't matter for an old woman like me.
But I still have an unmarried daughter to think of. You can't just leave us, a mother and daughter, to sleep on the streets.
Right on cue, Lu Wani crawled forward on her knees and bowed her head to the ground toward the door.
In a pitiful, sobbing voice, she cried, If our sister's soul is watching from above, please, show us some mercy.
Before she could even finish her sentence, the heavy iron gate of the mansion creaked open halfway with a loud clang.
Massive, sleek wolfhound charged out,
Letting out a low, menacing growl.
with it bared its sharp, snow-white fangs.
The crowd of onlookers
Instantly scrambled backward in panic. Lu's mother and Lu Wani were scared absolutely out of their wits. With a terrified shriek, Lu's mother collapsed onto the ground. Lu Wani scrambled to pull her up, and the two of them stumbled backward in sheer terror, getting dirt and dust all over the hems of their skirts. Holding the dog's leash, the gatekeeper said in a cold, leisurely voice, Our young lady is dead and gone.
Don't try to lecture us about duty or family ties.
And if we're really going to talk about unsettled business,
How about we talk about the 80 sets of dowry that mysteriously vanished into thin air at your Liu family mansion? Old madam, if you keep loitering at our gates,
I will report you to the authorities.
you won't have to worry about being homeless then.
The prison cells will gladly take you in.
The eyes of the crowd instantly locked onto Lu's mother and Luane. Refusing to pay their debts and begging at the door? How shameful.
Talk about thick-skinned.
Lu's mother's lips quivered, but she couldn't find a single word to say.
She struggled to her feet, dragged Luane along, and fled, as the gatekeeper slammed the gate shut behind them with a loud bang.
The full hound trotted back inside, wagging its tail. That night,
Lu's mother was completely exhausted from all the running around.
after being kicked out of the Lin mansion, she headed straight to the Chin family's residence.
Back then, she had wanted to form a marriage alliance with them.
But because she looked down on their lack of official rank, she had constantly refused to give them a straight answer.
But now, the Qin family wouldn't even open the door for them.
Left with no other choice, the mother and daughter had to swallow their pride, and with immense humiliation, they checked into a local inn. Wei Kaian told me about this. Her voice was dripping with sarcasm. And guess what? They actually stayed in the most expensive premium suite. No wonder they managed to squander their entire family fortune. I let out a satisfied laugh,
Picking up the teacup beside me.
and taking a slow, leisurely sip. You know, a person can't always live for others.
Sometimes, you have to live for yourself. Only by staying far away from those who drain you.
Can you finally live a good life? My life is meant to be a path of blooming flowers.
Not a miserable tug of war with a bunch of worthless leeches. I have to shake them off and leave them far behind,
Without giving them even a single chance to ever catch up again. That way, I can run off and happily enjoy my own beautiful, carefree life. I've wrapped up most of my business here in the capital. Madame Lu and Luan are barely scraping by in that cheap inn, pawing their hairpins to pay for their room, and trading their bracelets just to get food. Each day is more pathetic than the last. I have people keeping a close eye on their money. They won't even last a single month. I don't even need to lift a finger. They'll drain themselves until they're absolutely penniless. The only one I actually need to deal with is Lu Yan. The scouts I sent to track him have already sent word back.
Lu Wen is traveling with Lady Du.
Clutching the last of the Marcus's estate's bank bills in his pocket. Planning to spend 3 to 5 years leisurely traveling through Jiangdong. Completely unaware that back in the capital, their whole world collapsed half a month ago. My body is fully recovered during this time. My nanny found an excellent tonic recipe to boost my energy and nourish my blood,
Nourishing me with medicinal meals every single day.
Now my cheeks are rosy, my eyes are bright, and I'm finally ready to go out and show them what I can do. Taking my personal maid, Kaiyuan, and 7 or 8 highly skilled bodyguards, we rode like the wind, chasing after Lu Yan. By the time we caught up to Lu Yan and Lady Liu at the ferry dock, a soft, misty drizzle was falling. They were planning to board a boat at the dock to head down to Jianan.
The two of them stood under a single paper umbrella.
shoulder to shoulder beneath a willow tree at the ferry.
Lady Liu must have said something, because Lu Dan looked down at her, his face full of smiles. They looked so deeply in love, it would make anyone envious. From my carriage in the distance, I watched them quietly for a moment, and then gave my orders. The boat is already prepared. From the outside, it looks just like an ordinary passenger boat. The boatman was a simple, honest-looking young man. He spoke with a soft, southern accent, and when he smiled, he looked incredibly friendly. When Lu Yan went up to ask about the price, the boatman quoted an incredibly fair price, just 3 copper coins. Honest trade, no cheating anyone. He even eagerly helped them carry their luggage. Lu Yan and Lady Liu happily boarded the boat, and even asked the boatman for a pot of tea. They sat down, chatting and laughing, waiting for the boat to set sail. The boat slowly drifted away from the ferry port, and the scenery on the shore gradually faded into the distance.
Lu Yan stood the bow.
Hands behind his back, looking at the emerald hills on both sides as the spring breeze brushed past. He was thoroughly enjoying himself. Beside him, Lady Liu softly recited a line of poetry, something about journeying to Yangzhou amidst the misty blossoms of spring. He was taking his lovely bride to that city of Yangzhou to see the 10 miles of blooming peach blossoms, while I was on another boat, trailing them from a distance. After the boat had been sailing for over half a day, rocking gently along the way, Lu Yan and Lady Liu grew drowsy and fell fast asleep. Soothing sleeping incense had been lit in the cabin. The one rowing the boat was my guard, Lang Feng. Even this boat was bought by me just 2 days ago, all for this very moment.
Feng waved the oar toward us.
And my boat quickly pulled alongside. The guards swiftly searched the two of them, stripping them of every single banknote and piece of loose silver. This was the absolute last of the wealth they had stolen from the Marquis's estate. Wealth that the old Marquis had bezeled through corruption. It was the hard-earned blood and sweat of the people. It never belonged to them in the first place. Once the guards finished, they woke the two of them up and neutralized the sleeping incense in their systems. When Lu Yan woke up and saw me, his eyes widened like saucers. Linking. Yeah, you're not dead? I gave a faint, cold smile.
Thanks to you, I was lucky enough to survive.
But you, young Master Lu, traveling and enjoying the scenery with your little cousin on your wedding night.
Must feel pretty damn good, doesn't it?
Terrified, Lady Lu shrank behind Lu Yan, trembling like a leaf.
Putting on a brave front but shaking inside, Lu Yan demanded, What do you want?
I waved the banknotes in my hand. Oh, nothing much.
This is the Marskes estate's public money, and I am reclaiming it on behalf of the Imperial Court.
As for the two of you,
Go back to wherever you came from.
the massive mess in the capital is waiting for you to clean up yourselves.
After saying this, I ordered my guards to take them back to the ferry crossing,
With no money and no servants.
and stripped of the wealth and glory of the Marques's estate.
How on earth are they going to walk all the way from Jianan back to the capital?
Well, that's none of my business.
Meanwhile, I'll stay right here in the bustling capital, carving out a glorious new life for myself.
Although the Lin family accumulated vast wealth through trade, under to traditional social classes of scholars, farmers, artisans, and merchants, merchants have always been at the very bottom.
My parents are already the wealthiest merchants in Shushong.
Yet they still couldn't escape the schemes of that ruined Marquis's estate.
I'm going to change this.
I will make the Lin family imperial merchants. Back in the previous reign, when the emperor needed help raising military provisions,
The Ling family was granted the honorary title of second-ranked chief of the court of the imperial stud. Now that the world is at peace,
there are no more wars. If we want to build a career in politics, we must find another way.
back when I was still in Shushong,
I persuaded my father to fund poor but highly gifted scholars.
In this year's civil service exams, 3 of the scholars sponsored by the Lin family passed.
The most outstanding among them is Wen Heng, who ranked top of the second tier,
during the palace exam, the emperor herself praised his writing as exceptionally mature.
and said he is fully capable of taking on great responsibilities. Now he has been appointed to the capital governor's office.
As the officer of works, directly under the governor,
He is in charge of all construction and development in the capital.
Wen Heng is a man of gratitude. As soon as the results were posted, he sent a letter back saying, "If you have any commands, I will never refuse."
Now I'm planning to have him help me with something. The imperial court wants to open up trade with the western regions.
And plans to expand the East Market. The capital's current East Market, located in the southeastern part of the city, is already too small.
Imaui Hostel of the Court of State Ceremonial is located to the north.
Where foreign envoys reside. But traveling back and forth is highly inconvenient.
If they want to expand,
The most suitable location happens to be the area around the Marques's estate, which connects directly to the envoy hostel.
Bordering the Old East Market to the east,
and connecting to the official highway to the north.
the Southern Canal Pier. It was a prime location, practically made by heaven.
I had pored over the map of the capital at least 100 times, memorizing every single street and alley.
Except for the Marques's mansion, most of the properties in that area
Were just old, dilapidated houses.
Very few families lived there. Buying them all up would cost a fortune.
But I had the wealth to back it up. Quietly, I hired 7 or 8 brokers to negotiate.
The prices fluctuated.
Preventing anyone from realizing that a single buyer was acquiring everything.
Once the outer circle was secured,
I finally started buying up the properties in the center. It took 5 months, but I finally bought all 72 houses.
armed with a thick stack of land deeds and the newly drafted Eastern Market blueprints, I dressed in men's clothes and went to the residence I had purchased for Wen Heng in the capital.
He stared at the blueprints I handed him. His eyes instantly lighting up.
Although he ranked high in the imperial exams,
He was still young and lacked experience.
he had no major political achievements to show for himself yet.
This Eastern Market expansion plan was the perfect opportunity delivered on a silver platter.
The Lin family is willing to donate 36 residential plots under our name,
Along with all the acquired residential lands, entirely free of charge to the imperial court. This will all be used for the Eastern Market expansion. We only ask for one thing in return, and I hope you can help us pull some strings. You are my benefactor, my lady.
There is no need to address me so formally.
Just call me Wen Heng. Please, tell me, what do you need?
Speak freely. I paused for a moment. I want to secure an official title for my father.
Wen Heng fell silent.
He looked up at me and said,
These blueprints and land deeds? Custom dictates we should easily secure an official title.
But what rank are you aiming for, my lady?
I smiled faintly.
Lord Ren, what rank do you think this entire tract of land from the Lin family is worth?
Wen Wing did not answer immediately. He looked down at the map once more.
The drawings were incredibly, meticulously detailed.
Where to build shops?
Where to place the cargo stations? Which areas to reserve for roads? Where to establish the foreign merchant guilds? Every single detail was clearly marked.
Even the drainage ditches and fire alleys were taken into account.
This wasn't something that could be drawn in just a day or two.
Nor was it the work of an amateur.
Wen Zheng gave me a deep, long look,
Carefully rolled up the blueprint and stood up. Miss, rest assured.
This lowly official will do everything within his power.
After he laughed, Tai Yun leaned in and whispered,
Miss, can Lord Wen really pull this off?
He's only a 6 rank official. After all, he can't. But he knows who can.
The mayor of the capital wants political achievements.
The Ministry of Works wants the credit, and the Ministry of Revenue wants to save money. The Lin family is giving them a piece of land for free, along with a complete urban blueprint.
All 3 departments will benefit from this.
Who could possibly stand in the way?
Taiyuan nodded, only half understanding. Miss, the master and madam have already arrived in the capital.
This was the first time I would see my parents since faking my death.
My excitement was completely beyond words. I will definitely fulfill my father's lifelong wish.
And let the Lin family hold their heads high in the capital.
3 months later, the imperial decree arrived.
My father had dominated the business world for half his life, yet his hands shook uncontrollably as he knelt to receive the imperial decree.
As the minister of the Honglu Temple, he was now in charge of guests from all directions and welcoming foreign envoys.
In one single bound, he became a second-ranked high official of the court.
My mother was also granted the title of second-rank noble madam.
The expansion of the East Market went much smoother than anyone could have imagined.
The imperial court didn't take the Lin family's land for nothing, either.
The decree stated that, after the expansion, the entire street on the west side of the East Market would be planned and managed by the Lin family themselves, and their taxes would be cut in half for 5 years.
This was far more practical than any imperial bounty.
The old houses on that land were demolished, and a brand new market rose in their place.
Once the crowd gathers,
just collecting rent from the shops will be an absolute gold mine. 2 years later, on the day the expansion of the East Market was completed,
An entire capital emptied out to see it. The main street of the new East Market was so wide that 6 carriages could drive side by side.
The road was paved with freshly chiseled bluestone slabs,
Flanked by perfectly neat drainage ditches on both sides.
They called it a market, but it felt more like a miniature fortress city.
enclosed by high walls on all 4 sides.
With watchtowers standing guard at the 4 corners.
4 massive gates opened in all directions, north, south, east, and west, operating by the strict rhythm of the morning bells and evening drums.
The rules here were ironclad,
But rules were rules. And the lively bustle was another thing entirely.
the moment you entered the foreign merchant district to the west, it felt like stepping into a whole new world.
The shouting of the Persian merchants,
The music of the Kucha ludists,
The cries from the Koten flatfare stalls.
And the clashing gongs and drums from the theater halls all blended together like a rich, boiling stew. Go to the bubbling over with endless energy.
Merchants from every land,
camelgar caravans from the western regions,
Traveling monks from India.
wealthy Arab elites, and the capital's own officials and commoners. Everyone jostled shoulder to shoulder,
Packing the streets in a vibrant, roaring crowd.
It was a magnificent display of a glorious golden age.
inside the Persian spice shops.
Saffron,
black pepper, and cloves were piled high.
Their rich aromas drifting halfway down the street.
In the Arab jeweler shops
were rare treasures unseen anywhere else in the capital, like cat's eye gems.
emeralds, rubies, sapphires.
And even the legendary Suwa pearls that changed color with the light. The shops were packed 3 layers deep, completely mobbed with eager buyers.
In my line taverns run by the Kucha people,
Huge clay jars imported from the western regions were built right into the walls. The jar mouths were plugged with cloth, and the wine flowed through bamboo pipes, glowing ruby red like divine nectar.
Out of the way, out of the way. The caravan is coming.
The crowd parted automatically as a line of camels lumbered slowly through. Behind them followed several ox carts. Carts were piled high with rolls of felt and carpets. Suddenly, the crash of gongs and drums echoed from the distance.
the young performers over there are starting their show.
Someone shouted out. Immediately, a massive crowd swarmed toward the south. After the original Marquis's manor was leveled,
I had a massive open-air arena built on the site. It was surrounded on all sides by spectator stands made of bamboo and wood,
with a grand stage right in the center. Towering flagpoles were raised around the stage, tied with colorful banners and streamers. A traditional wrestling match was currently underway on the stage.
The wrestlers grappled back and forth, slamming into each other with earth-shattering thuds.
Nearby, in an open space,
A crowd had gathered in a tight circle. Inside, a storyteller slammed his wooden gavel.
spinning a dramatic tale from the 3 kingdoms. He was just getting to the part where Jaws Long fought his way in and out of Changban Slope 7 times.
spittle flew from his mouth in his excitement.
His voice booming loud and clear.
Walking a bit further,
I came across the acrobatics area. A boy of 14 or 15, a long bamboo pole in his mouth. A porcelain bowl was balanced at the very top of the pole,
While his hands spun 3 plates,
with his feet pedaling a unicycle,
he circled the entire arena.
dazzling everyone who watched.
Over by the northern wall, a few performers from the western regions had set up a small tent. They were performing illusions.
A tall, thin Kongjin man cast a black cloth onto the ground.
Muttering incantations under his breath. When he pulled the cloth away, a live snake was actually coiled on the ground.
The crowd of onlookers shrieked in terror.
Yet they couldn't help but crowd back in to watch the traveling performers conjure flames out of thin air.
With a rub of his hands, blue flumes ignited at his fingertips.
Then he stuffed the fire right into his mouth.
surrounded whole. and made the smoke puff right out of his ears.
I watched with absolute relish, already calculating my next move in my head. Just this isn't nearly enough. Later on, I'll have to scout for a few more performing troops.
Crosstalk comedy, puppet shows,
And even shadow puppetry. I want them all in here. It would be even better to hire some folk ballad singers and set up a shaded pavilion right next to them. We can sell tea and wine there, sipping drinks while watching the shows. Hectors, hectors, hectors. Now that is what I call living.
At dusk,
I stood where the main entrance of the Marquis Manor used to be,
which is now the entrance to the bazaar.
looking back down the entire East Market Street.
As the sun dipped below the horizon,
The fading twilight bathed the cobblestone road, painting the entire street in a beautiful golden hue.
As night began to fall and the lights flickered on, the lanterns of the East Market lit up one by one down the street, casting a warm, crimson glow over everything. In the distance, the drums and gongs of the bazaar grew louder,
Faintly signaling the start of the grand opera,
Liu Yan made his way into the city. But the further he walked, the more uneasy he felt. He remembered the street in front of the Marquis Manor. Years ago, it was one of the quietest alleys in the capital, lined on both sides with locust trees. In the summer, their lush canopy would shade the entire street. But now, the street was more than 3 times wider than before.
the cobblestone road was newly paved, and shops were packed tightly on both sides.
Every few steps, there was a vendor stall, selling just about everything under the sun. The steadiest, his heart skipped a beat. This was my Uz. Tough. Yet, he still clung to a sliver of hope.
It has been 3 years, and the capital changes fast.
Taking a wrong turn is common enough. But as he rounded the corner, finally, where the Marquis Manor of his memory should have stood, there was only a wide, open plaza. The banners of the Marquis Manor Bazaar fluttered loudly in the wind. Beneath the banners, a burly man in bright red trousers was putting on a show, smashing a massive stone on his chest. A heavy hype of granite, weighing over 100 pounds, was resting on his chest. The surrounding crowd erupted into a deafening roar of cheers. Liu Yan's face instantly went pale. Right at that moment,
A pole-balancing acrobat nearby was shifting his position.
the performer balanced a 30-foot bamboo pole right on his head. And standing at the very top of the pole was a small child, barely 7 or 8 years old. A child was still clutching 3 colorful spinning plates in his hands.
Out of the way! Out of the way!
Someone shouted twice. Yuan was still standing there, dazed,
His eyes staring blankly at the wall.
as if his pressure points had been tapped, paralyzing him. Someone shouted again,
Much louder this time.
just then.
the hyper breather across the street reached the climax of his performance.
A jet of flame erupted from the performer's mouth.
Instead of shooting into the sky,
It swept right across Liu Yan's head. Johan only felt a sudden, searing heat on his head, followed by the all-too-familiar smell of street performance soot.
in an instant, his face was covered in black soot.
Looking exactly like a soot-stained servant.
The onlookers froze for a second, before bursting into a roaring laugh.
Ah! He gasped, taking 2 steps back, frantically slapping at his head with both hands, to pull out his still smoldering hair. The fire breather was also startled. My bad, my bad. Sir, you are standing way too close. I'm breathing fire here. If you stand right in front of me,
of course you're going to get burned.
This is the Yongning Marca Manor.
how dare you run wild on my property?
Liu Yan's chest heaved violently as he roared.
The crowd scoffed. Young in Marquis Manor?
The title was stripped 3 years ago, Len.
What wild mountain did you crawl out of, you crazy monkey?
How do you not even know that? It was like a sudden bolt of lightning striking him.
Liu Yan had imagined 1,000 ways of returning home.
He thought that if he just slipped away, someone would naturally clean up his mess.
And after leisurely traveling, he would return in style, still the heir of the manor. But as his eyes swept over the surroundings, there were only foreign merchants' camel caravan,
Acrobatic stalls, storytelling platforms,
and street performance arenas. The words died right in his throat.
the Marquis Manor was gone.
The noble title was gone.
Not a single inch of this place belonged to him anymore. The fire breather leaned in to inspect his head. Sir, I'm afraid
You won't be able to save that hair of yours.
I've got half a bottle of healing salve here. I originally kept it for my own burns. Why don't you take it and rub it on?
Liu Yan glared at him viciously.
Turned around and stormed off.
He was in such a rush. He tripped over a loose paving stone, stumbling forward a couple of steps, before crashing face first onto the ground. The crowd of onlookers burst into another roar of laughter. But this guy, he must be out of his mind.
He's both blind and stupid. A total lost cause. Liu Yan shook his head in disbelief.
He had only been gone for 3 years. The world couldn't have changed this fast. He began to suspect he was trapped in a nightmare. He pinched himself hard right between his brows, then slapped himself hard twice across the face, but he still didn't wake up. His home was really gone. Lady Liu followed closely behind him.
Dressed in tattered, worn-out clothes.
Her face was raw and chapped from the harsh sea winds.
Tinnily, she tugged on his sleeve.
Where are we going?
Liu Ya ignored her.
stumbling and staggering along as he made his way toward the capital prefect's office.
He was the Marquis of Yonin, a noble personally titled by the late emperor.
As long as he was back, there was still a chance to turn things around. Lu Yan waited outside the government office for half a day before finally making it inside,
The bailiff of the capital prefect glanced at Lu Yan.
looking at him as if he were a mere beggar.
The Yoing, Marseille.
Your title was stripped 3 years ago.
Lu Yan froze, then snapped. I'm still alive. By what right did they strip my title?
The bailiff slowly pulled out a dossier and tossed it right in front of him. Lu Yan looked down. The name of the old Marquis, Lu Xuan, caught his eye. Accused of embezzling military funds? To an astronomical extent. Absolutely unforgivable. How utterly ruthless. Banned from office forever. Those words, banned from office forever, burned so deeply that his vision went completely black.
The officer added coldly, "Your wife jumped off a cliff to follow you in death on your very wedding day." With no male heirs left in the Marquis's household, the noble title was naturally stripped away.
Lu Yan opened his mouth, but not a single word came out. Suddenly, he flashed back to that night 3 years ago. He thought leaving back then was a gamble to survive.
By dumping all the trouble onto Lin Hong, he figured Lin Hong would naturally clean up his mess. But he never expected Lin Hong died too.
He had backed himself right into a dead end. Walking out of the capital court, Li Yan felt completely hollowed out.
He began searching everywhere for his mother. She had to have some money left on her.
But when he finally found his mother, his heart sank straight to the bottom.
Mother Lu was living in a rundown shack in the south of the city.
The courtyard wall was half collapsed, and the paint on the door was peeling away in patches. She was sitting right on the doorstep, picking out salvageable bits from a pile of rotten vegetable leaves. Her hair had gone completely white. "Mother." As she heard his voice, Mother Lu raised her head. Her cloudy eyes stared at him for a long, quiet moment before she suddenly let out a piercing wail.
She rushed over, sobbing, and began beating him wildly.
"You worthless scoundrel. You only cared about yourself. You ran away and destroyed our family's estate. You lost our noble title. You've ruined my life." Nguyen stumbled back under her heavy blows, and his guilt quickly turned into anger. He grabbed his mother's wrists and hissed in a low voice, "Mother, how can you blame me? You were the one who agreed to let me run. It was your idea to let Ling Kang take the fall and pay off the debt. You told me to come back only after the debt was cleared." Silenced by a sudden outburst, Mother Lu couldn't utter a single syllable. All she could do was cry. Lu Yan grew angrier as he spoke. "Do you have any idea how much I suffered out there? I had to walk all the way from Jiangnan back to the capital, starving, never knowing where my next meal was coming from. I almost starved to death. And now that I finally made it back. One,
What about you?
you ruined this family. You reduced our home to this.
And you still have the nerve to blame me?
His mother trembled all over from his shouting, unable to utter a single word. Right in the middle of their fight, Lu Wani walked in. She was wearing a short-sleeved silk shirt, with thick makeup plastered on her face, but it couldn't hide the fine lines around her eyes and the exhaustion underneath.
When she saw Lu Yan,
She froze for a second, but her face instantly darkened. She spoke coldly. "So, you actually remembered you have a home?" Lu Yan was already fuming, and seeing his sister's sarcastic attitude only added fuel to the fire. "What kind of attitude is that? I'm your older brother."
Lu Wani's voice turned shrill.
"Brother? You think you're worthy of being my brother? You ran off with that cheap vixen, leaving the whole family behind to fend for themselves, to even survive. I had to marry a nobody merchant as a second wife. How dare you show your face here? Marrying him was your own choice. I didn't force you. We didn't even have food on the table. If I didn't marry, was I supposed to just starve to death with Mom?" The siblings went back and forth, their fight escalating into a vicious shouting match. Finally, in a fit of rage, Lu Wani slammed her iron bowl onto the ground, while Wei Dan kicked a nearby wooden stool aside. "You are absolutely unreasonable." Eventually, the neighbors couldn't take the noise anymore. "Stop screaming! If you don't shut up, we're reporting you." Only then did the ridiculous scene finally come to an end. Lu Yan ended up staying in the southern district, but deep down, he knew
Who couldn't count on his mother anymore.
and his sister was even more useless. He had to find a way out for himself. He reached out to many of his old acquaintances, but not a single one of them was willing to lend him a penny. In fact, they avoided him like the plague. "I don't know you." However, they did throw him a useful bone. The Lin family's only daughter was dead. If he swallowed his pride and cared for Father Lin in his old age, he could use the Lin family's massive fortune to pave his way back into court. Lu Yan was sure he could stage a comeback. Bursting with confidence, Liu Yan used his mother's very last bit of silver to buy a decent-looking outfit.
He cleaned himself up and headed straight to the Lin family mansion.
After the guard announced his arrival,
Lin Yuan-san finally stepped out,
Lu Yan immediately put on his most flattering smile.
stepping forward with a respectful bow.
Uncle Lin, your nephew Lu Yan is here to pay his respects. But Lin Yuan-san stared at him coldly. You actually have the nerve to show your face here.
Lu Yan forced a smile. Uncle Lin.
what happened back then? It was all a big misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? You ran off with your cousin on your wedding night,
Driving my daughter to jump off a cliff. And you have the audacity to call that a misunderstanding? Uncle Lin.
I really had no choice back then.
Lin Yuan-san didn't give him a single second to explain.
Drag him out.
He spun around and barked at the guards. Beat this animal and throw him out. If he dares to show his face here again, hand him straight over to the authorities.
Show him for murder and robbery.
Instantly, 2 burly guards stepped forward.
They grabbed Lu Yan by both arms and hurled him out of the mansion.
Lu Yan face planted hard onto the dirt, scraping his face up and looking incredibly pathetic. Hidden in the carriage behind him, I had been watching everything from afar. I could barely hold in my laughter.
Despondent, Lu Yan dragged himself back. But halfway down the road,
Trapping in a tight circle.
The leader, a man with a brutal, scarred face, stepped forward.
Lu Yan, your old man owed our bank 13,000 tael of silver back in the day.
Think true. That's now 20,000 taels.
And you're paying us back today.
Nu Yan's legs started shaking violently with fear.
that was my dad's debt.
It has nothing to do with me. Story to let me say what I just start.
Nothing to do with you? The man slammed his wooden club heavily on the ground. That's not what you said when you were out partying and squandering money with your old man.
永远圈着狼。
But he was grabbed tightly by the collar.
They stripped him of the few coins he had left and shoved him around. He crashed heavily onto the hard ground.
So keep putting on airs.
Zhu Yan lay there for a long time, barely able to catch his breath.
He struggled to crawl back up and limped his way back home.
After this massive disaster,
He began to hate everyone.
He hated his lustful, spendthrift, deadbeat father.
He hated his useless mother.
He hated his sister for failing to marry into a wealthy family. He even hated his dead aunt. But the one he hated most of all was Liu Shi. If I hadn't run away with her, how could I have ended up in this miserable state?
Lu Yan's temper grew worse by the day.
He constantly took his anger out on Lucia, screaming vile insults at her. At the slightest annoyance, he would smash things and curse at her. Lucia lived in constant fear all day long, silently cooking congee, washing clothes, and cleaning the house. She had thought about running away, but she had nowhere to go. Her family had been convicted of crimes, and her distant relatives refused to take her in.
if she left Lu Yan,
And in the end, she just couldn't take it anymore. That night, Lu Yan came home drunk again, beating and screaming at Lu Shi once more.
Lu Shi finally snapped.
He grabbed the scissors from the table, pointed them at Lu Yan, and shrieked, "Just try cursing at me again! I'll drag you down to hell with me."
Lu Yan gasped, utterly terrified by her outburst. He instinctively stumbled back 2 steps. Lu Shi seized the opportunity and bolted out the door,
Vanishing into the dark night, and she was never seen again. Where Liu Shi gone? Lu Yan's life became a living hell. There was no one to wash his clothes or cook his meals, no one to serve him hand and foot. And since he was lazy to the bone, he quickly pawned off every last valuable in the house. In the end, he was reduced to scraping by on odd jobs in the streets just to survive.
Sometimes he would wander all the way to the East Market.
Hiding in the shadows, staring at the land that used to belong to him,
He watched the endless crowds,
bustling with life.
He saw the Lin family's business growing bigger and more successful by the day.
He saw them draped in fine silks and satins, traveling in grand carriages wherever they went. His heart was consumed by bitter envy and regret. If only he hadn't run away with Liu Shi. If only I had cherished Lin Han and married her properly. If only I hadn't been so damn selfish.
but there is no turning back time.
3 days after Liu Yan's death, I creamed my true identity and returned home. To the public, my story was that after falling off the cliff, I was rescued by a passing caravan. But a severe head injury wiped out my memory. I spent all this time recovering in Jiangnan, and only recently did my memories finally return. Once people recognized me, I was finally able to come home. Did others suspect anything? Honestly, I couldn't care less. The Lin family is now at the height of their power, so there is no shortage of people eager to smooth things over for me. 2 weeks after my return,
Lu's mother stood outside our gates, screaming for the Lin family to get out here.
Ling Hao, you wicked woman! You murdered my son!
If you hadn't run away,
How could the Marquis's estate have fallen?
my father was just about to go out and deal with her.
I stopped him.
I stayed away from the Lu family for 3 years.
And now, it's time to settle this once and for all.
I set up an armchair right outside the door, calmly debating Madame Lu.
Now, Madame Le, that's where you're wrong. Your son faked his death on our wedding night just to run off with his cousin.
And I only jumped off that cliff out of devotion.
If you hadn't run away, how would I have ended up stuck in Jiannam for 3 years?
The Lu family lost their noble title because of corruption and lawbreaking. It's written clear as day in the case files of the Court of Judicial Review.
What does that have to do with a daughter-in-law who had barely been in your house for 2 hours?
Madame Lu still refused to back down.
My son just jumped off the cliff and lost his memory.
That's why he didn't come back.
I burst out laughing.
Oh, really? What a coincidence. I also jumped off the cliff and lost my memory.
That's why I didn't come back. I guess the feng shui at the bottom of that cliff must be terrible.
It must specifically curse people's brains.
Old madam, if you want to find out the truth, why don't you take a jump yourself?
Once you're back, we can get our stories straight.
Go on. Madame Lu's face flushed a deep, angry purple.
You unfilial wretch.
Old madam, Article 10 of Volume 4 of the Great Chill Legal Code states that if a woman loses her husband,
She may return to her own family on her own accord.
no one can force her to remain a widow.
Your son and I never even consummated our marriage. So don't talk to me about duty or devotion.
You set me up, Madame Lu finally snapped, swearing hoarsely.
I stood up and walked over to her. Leaning in, I whispered in a voice only the two of us could hear. When you were scheming against me back then,
How come you never thought this day would come?
people really should live with a conscience.
Madame Lu's mouth twitched.
She couldn't utter a single word.
She turned around and slunk away in defeat. From then on, she never dared to come to our door and make trouble again.
My days returned to peace once more.
My father's career in court went smoother than ever.
Her winter business was thriving day by day. Everything at home was perfect. Sometimes, I would find myself thinking of the western regions. I think of that familiar road leading to the western regions.
I think of the lonely plumes of smoke rising from the vast desert.
And the round, setting sun over the endless river.
I can still hear the gentle clinking of camel bells echoing in the wind.
That was the free life I had always yearned for. The imperial court decided to open a trading post in Ganzhou, allowing merchants from the Central Plains to trade with the various kingdoms of the western regions.
Yanzhou is the strategic gateway of the Hexi corridor.
This newly opened trading post holds massive business opportunities.
I said goodbye to my parents,
Determined to carve out a brand new path for myself there. The day I left the capital, the weather was beautiful.
The sky was high and clear, the clouds light,
And a refreshing autumn breeze filled the air.
As my carriage slowly rolled out of the city gates,
We lifted the curtain.
and took one last look at the skyline of the capital. Beside me, Daiyin asked when we would return. I paused for a moment, then smiled and said,
No rush. Once we've seen enough of the desert sunsets,
"We'll talk about coming back."
Our caravan traveled west for 3 days.
Before arriving at a courier station,
I got off the carriage and switched to a horse.
planning to ride for a bit to stretch my legs.
Just as I swung myself into the saddle, I heard a sudden, hurried thumping of hooves behind me. A lone rider on a chestnut horse, covered in dust from the road, came rushing up.
It was Wen Zhang. I pulled back on the reins, watching as he galloped right up to me. I smiled, raising an eyebrow. "Lord Wen, where might you be heading?"
He steadied himself in the saddle, coughing twice before he could even speak.
He must have ridden way too fast,
And swallowed a mouthful of cold wind.
Ganzhou. I've just been appointed as the vice governor of Ganzhou, so it seems we're heading the same way. The vice governor of Ganzhou is a lower 6th rank post, in charge of local military and security. I looked at him.
And couldn't help but burst into laughter.
Ha ha ha!
Going from judicial administrator of the capital prefecture to vice governor of Ganzhou,
That's a demotion of 2 whole ranks.
the ears flushed red. The trading post in Ganzhou is a matter of national importance. And besides, I wanted to go to Ganzhou anyway.
Convenient indeed, I replied, gently nudging my horse's flanks to ride on.
The sound of horse hooves scatters in the autumn wind.
A cool breeze brushes my face, and the camel caravan is about to set off. Their bells chime softly in the wind.
As for those who have already gone far away,
They are nothing but stories from a night long gone.
The wind blows, the leaves rustle,
And it is time for me to start a new chapter.
3 years later, the Danzhou border market became the most prosperous trading hub on the Hexi corridor.
I led our merchant caravan, transporting silk from the Central Plains,
Along with tea and porcelain, in a steady stream to the western regions.
In return, we brought back grapes from the western regions, along with alfalfa and fine horses, back to the Central Plains. But we didn't just do business. We also taught the locals how to farm and weave,
plus irrigation systems,
and helped the imperial court bring peace and stability to the borderlands,
Wenheng worked tirelessly in his post in Ganzhou,
disciplining the troops,
maintaining order, and keeping the trade routes safe and open.
We fought side by side,
supporting each other. And on this vast land, we built our own happiness with our own 2 hands.
I finally realized
that true strength isn't about depending on anyone else, nor is it about how much wealth or status you hold.
It is about having an independent soul and the power to create your own value.
a woman doesn't have to be trapped in the inner courtyards of a grand estate.
Or sacrifice her entire life for a marriage.
We can step out into the world and achieve our grandest ambitions in a much wider arena. As for those who once plotted against me, they have all paid the price for their greed and selfishness. Lu Yan's end is proof that wealth gained through schemes and harming others is nothing but a fleeting illusion. Only by staying grounded, working with a clear conscience, and earning happiness through honest sweat will things truly last.
In the warm glow of the setting sun, Wenhao and I stand side by side atop the Ganzhou city walls.
Gazing at the endless Kililian mountains in the distance,
We watch the endless stream of caravans passing below
and see the happy faces of people living in peace and prosperity.
I know in my heart,
This is the life I truly wanted.
This is the most beautiful thing in the world.
Nothing compares to using your own power to make this world a little bit better.